Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. Our guest today is Stacey Brown Randall. We're going to talk about referrals. And I'm looking forward to having a fresh perspective on referrals because it's kind of a love-hate thing for most of us business owners. And I know that you have a very unique system. So, welcome to the show, Stacey.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right, let's get into this.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to learning some things in this episode. I wasn't kidding about the love-hate referral thing. I get a lot of my clients from referrals. I would actually say that the bulk of my clients come from referrals from other clients. But I've been in referral groups and I've done the different stuff. And from my experience, these sort of proven systems, no offense to people I know in BNI and things like that, and even some high net worth networking groups that I've been in, right? Really has not provided me with a very good return on investment. Even with the years of experience that I have in business, a proven track record, um, there's just something kind of weird about the whole thing. And so maybe you can enlighten us as to how in the world you got into the business of helping people get referrals, and maybe through all of that you can shed a little bit of light on, because obviously if you're doing things different, you recognize that the existing model just doesn't work very well.
It really doesn't. I call them my traditional or old school referral triggers, and they are just the traditional way for decades and decades and decades that people have been teaching referrals. And it's the same thing. I think that is the thing that I find like it shouldn't every time I see somebody else's email come across and they're like talking about referrals, or there's an article that you can see the headline has the word referral in it, right? Or it's, just anywhere I see out there today about people talking about referrals, I still have this part of me that is going to click on it. One, because it's my world. So of course I want to see what other people are saying. And then there's just this little part of me that was like, please don't say to ask. Please, will this one be different? Will this piece of information be different? Can we look at referrals differently? And it's all the same. Like, I opened up an email today that came from somebody saying this referral strategy. And the very first thing it said, it's like, you just got to ask for them. And I'm like, why in this day and age is that still the same tired old advice that we are giving people? And, I've been doing this now for almost 10 years. And so obviously I have answers for all of that. But when I look at these old tired ways of doing it, I think it's because it's the easy way out. When I talk to people about generating referrals the way that I teach it, and how it's so different from the old school mentality of asking for referrals or incentivizing for referrals or networking to be known by a ton of people all the time to get referrals, or, to make sure you're trying to be overly promotional and gimmicky to generate referrals, or maybe worse, doing nothing because you hate those and you're like, I'll just hope they arrive. The idea is it's the same thing. To this day, I just opened an email today that talked about asking for referrals. And I'm like, when is the majority going to move in the direction of actually wait? Nope, those aren't working. They feel awkward and uncomfortable. People aren't doing them. Why is that still the main thing that we seem to be served up when you go to Google and ask the question about generating referrals? And I think it's just because it's been around forever and people haven't really paid attention to understanding the pieces behind the scenes about what makes a referral happen. And then how do you build a strategy understanding that? So, I was like most people that was like, hey, I want to get some referrals. And then I go out there and I look about how to get referrals. And I'm like, nope, I don't want to do any of those. I don't want to ask people. I don't want to have to compensate for them. I don't incentivize, give the under the table kickback. And so I was like, all right, well, let's just see if I can figure out a little different way to start generating referrals. And Alicia, I'll be honest with you, in the beginning, it was like throwing spaghetti on the wall. I was like, I don't know. Let's see. Will this stick? Will this stick? It was like, it's like being told you have to cold call. And you're like, if I can get the same results without cold calling, can I do it differently? Right? Like telling your first sales manager boss, can I do it differently if I can do anything without having to cold call, if I get the same results? And then you will try just about anything, not to have to sit down at that phone and make your dreaded 40 dials or 100 dials a day or whatever it is, right? And so for me, it was kind of the same thing. I was like, how else can I get referrals? And so it was really just testing different ideas out. They weren't theories, they weren't concepts, they weren't that well formed in the beginning 10 years ago. It was like, let's try this, let's do this. This feels right. And then what I realized after my first year in business is that I had generated over 100 referrals, actually 112 referrals that first year without having to ask for them or compensate or be gimmicky or be, promotional or networking all the time. I have 3 kids. It's not really going to be a possibility for me. And I was like, oh, wait, there is a different way to generate referrals. And so it helped me turn my back on the strategies that are mostly taught today with just a new, fresh way of looking at referrals.
All right. So right now, I'm sure there are plenty of people who are intrigued. And of course, you're not going to give away all of your secrets, but we've got to know, right? We've got to know here what is some of this different stuff that does not involve all of the awkward asking and time sucking networking and all of those things that are sort of the
Awful.
old school way of referrals.
Yeah. So the number one thing I always tell folks that they have to understand about referrals is really getting down to the heart of what's happening when a referral is happening. And when you unpack what's actually happening when somebody is referring somebody else, right? When you get down to that moment of being like, okay, let's really look at this. What's really happening? When you can unpack that, everything else will shift and change in terms of how you think about referrals. And then you'll have a decision to make, which is now, do I want to take different action and build different strategies around generating those referrals? So let's break down, like at its heart and at its core, what's actually happening when a referral is taking place. So I'm going to put you on the spot for just a minute, but I want you to think about the last person that, or the most recent one that you can remember. It doesn't actually matter, but just somebody that you referred, like, so you had a friend, a colleague, maybe it's a client of yours now, and they needed something and you referred them to someone else. Do you remember why you wanted to refer them?
Yeah, that actually literally just occurred within maybe 24 hours. So it's fresh in my mind.
Yes.
And I
Okay.
referred one of my private clients, her husband needs some business coaching. And because it would be awkward for me to do the business and mindset coaching for both of them, I actually referred them to my coach. And that is because I know that they're going to be in good hands. And it's something that is going to reflect positively on me. It's somebody that I feel confident is going to deliver a positive experience.
So the back half of your answer was the why you picked the person that you picked. But do you remember what you said for the front half of your answer? You had a client who
Mm-hmm.
what?
Who needed some business coaching.
Needed help,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. Somebody came to you and said, a client came to you and said, hey, my husband needs help. Can you help us? Right? It would have mattered if they said, we need a new CPA, right? We need a new attorney. We need a new whatever, right? We got to get a new financial advisor. At the end of the day, you had somebody who knew that they could trust you to come to you with this problem and that you would help solve it. Most people think that the back half of what you said, which, and both answers are right, right? I mean, but you said them both because most people do without realizing it. Most people believe the referral happens because of that back half of the answer, because I trust my coach, because I know it'll make me look good, because I know they'll be in great hands. But that's actually secondary to why you did it to start with, which is the first thing you said. You had a client that came to you and said, hey, we need help.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, what it's ultimately all about with referrals is you helping your client. That's at its fundamentalist, at its basic form. It's, hey, somebody needs help. And we don't say these words to ourselves, but this is how it feels. I get to be the hero by helping them. I get to help a fellow human, right? I get to help somebody that I care about. I get to help someone that I know, and I get to put them on the right path. And that's ultimately what makes a referral happen. The reason why your client or her husband will show up to a conversation with your coach and be more willing to say yes to your coach, will be less price sensitive, will probably close quicker, right? And easier, is because they trust you. So they trust your coach to solve their problem. And that trust continuum is really, really important. You have to trust the coach as to why you would even refer the coach to them. And then, of course, now they're going to pick up on that transfer of trust. But it all started because you were going to help them and you made the decision to help them. And in that moment, you got to be the hero and you got to help somebody. Now, we don't think about, oh, good, I get to give a referral today and be a hero. Like, we don't actually say those words like in our subconsciousness or even in our consciousness, but that's how we're designed. That's how we're made. That's how we're built to help others. I mean, I should always say that with a disclaimer. Most of us are built this way, to want to help others and to help others when we can. And when we know, oh, I totally know who you need to talk to. This will be amazing. It'll be awesome for you, right? Then we're usually much more likely to make that connection. But what people don't pay attention to is that ultimately the person came to you for help. And then you decided to provide that help. And in that moment, you got to be the hero. At the heart as to why that client will probably say yes to your coach and become a paying client of your coach is because they trusted you and you help them the best that you can. But it all comes down to that relationship you have with them and them needing your help to find the right resource. Most of the time, when you think about the advice that's out there, ask for referrals, pay for referrals, network to know a ton of people for referrals, or of course, be promotional and gimmicky to receive referrals. It puts the focus on you. It would be as if your coach thought that referral happening between you and your client was your coach a male or a female?
My coach is a male.
Male. So it would be about your client's husband, right? It would be like that moment. It would be like your coach, him thinking, oh, this moment is about me, right? This moment is about me being referred. And it's not, it's about you helping someone. It just so happens to be that you connected them with your coach. So he's the solution provider in this and the benefactor of a brand new client, but it happened based on that help factor, which is why it all works the way it ultimately wants to work. But all the other advice is based on me, but referrals aren't about me. They're about my referral source who has the opportunity of somebody who needs what I do. And my referral source saying, yes, you should talk to Stacey. She'll be able to solve your problems. Whether my referral source is a client, current or past client, is a center of influence, is somebody in my network, right? It's that idea that it's about them helping someone. So in that moment, you can see where you have the advice like, well, let me just go ask all my referral sources to refer me. Well, that becomes the trigger. I'm always asking. And there's not always an opportunity to refer. No matter what anybody tries to tell you, nobody walks around thinking, I wonder how I can refer Stacey's business today. Nobody wakes up thinking that. We don't wake up thinking about how can I refer to someone else today? We wake up thinking about ourselves, right? If we're being truly honest. And so when we think about it from that perspective, all the advice makes referrals about you. Offer to pay, always be asking, right? Make sure that you're networking to be seen by a bunch of people. They never can forget you, right? Make sure you're putting in your email signature, the greatest compliment you can give me as a referral. So that will trigger a referral. That's been the old school advice for years, but it makes it about you. And referrals are about your referral source. And the only thing you have to manage and to control in that situation is the relationship you have with your referral source. So when that opportunity presents itself, they only think, of course, I'm only going to refer to Stacey. Of course, I'm only going to refer to Alicia. I can't imagine referring to anybody else.
So there was a tremendous amount of value in what you just shared there, because that is a huge mindset shift and something that is really obvious, as most truisms are, once it is brought to your conscious awareness, and yet not obvious enough, right? That it is just sort of unconscious knowledge. So now those individuals who are listening, who are like, okay, I get this. That's spot on. It makes so much sense. That is what, how I feel when I'm giving a referral. That's how, that is, it's logical. It makes so much sense. So how does that actually become then a strategy?
Well, the easy answer is it's not one strategy. It's not, you're not going to solve all your referral problems with just one simple strategy. That doesn't mean you can't get a lot of the referral results that you want from one or two simple strategies. But ultimately, when I'm helping a client build what we would call a referable business, there's going to be more than one strategy that's ultimately at play. And some of these strategies will be like, this is the plan you build, right? And then you execute on it throughout the year. And other things are very situational. Hey, in this moment when this is happening, this is what you ultimately want to say. So some we refer to as like situational referral strategies or tactics and those are much more language based or sometimes smaller process based. And then other ones are like, okay, let's make sure we've got this strong foundation built so that you can receive referrals when the opportunities are ultimately there. What strategies your business needs to put in place has a lot to do with where you're starting, right? So when I am working with a client and they're trying to decide, okay, which of the strategies do they want to start with, right, to deploy, I'm always like, we're going to start based on if you have referral sources or not. So if we use your business for an example, right, we're pretty sure, right, that you have referral sources. And if I had to guess, you probably have more than a dozen or so. And who knows what that number is, right? When you go through the process that I teach of how to clearly identify who your referral sources are, we really want to look and understand it's not just how many referral sources you have, it's which ones are active versus which ones are inactive. Because the longer you go without referring someone to you, like the harder it is, right, for them to remember to do it. And so the idea there is we look at, do you have referral sources? And if you have people referring you, I usually tell clients around, if you have 5 or 6 people referring you, then you have what we would call a baseline of referral sources. And from there, the easiest strategy for us to build is to take care of those people in a very different way and using different language so that we have the opportunity to generate more referrals from them. But most people will find themselves in a place where they need more people referring them. Maybe they have some, maybe they have none. Maybe they have a dozen or 2 dozen or 3 dozen people referring, but they need 50, right? Maybe they have 4 people referring them and they really need 15. Usually most people also then have to learn the strategy of, but what do I do when I have that amazing client that I really wish would refer me? And I don't want to have to hit them over the head and ask them to refer me, but I can't just like will it into existence either. Like, oh, just give me a referral, right? So there's a strategy we teach about how you take those clients and contacts or centers of influence that have never referred you and cultivate them into a referral source so that they give you that first referral. So then they become part of your referral source plan. And so that's typically where we start. But there's a lot of nuances that get layered on top of that. We kind of talk about it as like a flow chart, right? You kind of start with your foundational 3 strategies, and then you kind of flow into now what would make this better is quality of the clients you're being referred to an issue. There's a way to have a conversation with a referral source about quality so that they don't get defensive and they don't stop referring you. What's your closing ratio of the referred prospects you receive? How many are you closing into paying clients versus how many are you not? And if there is a miss there, then there's a strategy around the way you handle a conversation with a referred prospect over somebody who came through a Facebook ad or someone who met you at a networking event. There's just a different way that we have those conversations and communicate. And so based on your like where you're starting from and what strategy you need to get more referrals in the door, we then also are really clear on paying attention to now what makes it better. Like when those referrals are coming in the door, are they the right quality? Are you closing them? And then there's other strategies that we kind of layer on top. But it all comes down to one very important heart premise. And that is whether you're getting a few referrals or a lot of referrals, at the end of the day, you believe that you have an obligation and it's the right thing to do to take care of the people who are taking care of your business by referring clients to you. And if you fundamentally believe, yes, these people should know that I'm thankful. They should feel my gratitude, that I am glad that they refer people to me. If you believe that, then the next step is, okay, so then what are you going to do about it? Like, how are you going to take care of them differently in a way that will also still help you get more referrals without it being any of those old school referral tactics, and having to worry about those things. So it comes down to the relationship that you have with your referral sources and whether or not you feel as if you need to do something to maintain that. But the how we maintain that is ultimately what makes it work for the ultimate result, which is more referrals.
Love it. Okay, I know there's so much more gold in you, but I'm gonna pivot because I do want to take a moment and speak to you as the owner of your own business. And you briefly mentioned that you learned this through sort of your own kind of inner turmoil, right? Um, and maybe that is where you want to focus as you answer this question, or maybe somewhere else. But I would love if you would be willing to share with us maybe one mindset obstacle that you've personally had to work through and overcome on your journey to get to where you are today.
Yeah, I think that not as much today, but definitely earlier on in my journey to be a complete and total contrarian in an industry that has a lot of other experts all saying the same thing, just with their own spin on it. And I kind of come out of left field and I say things completely different. But I had success to prove it. But in the beginning, I remember always being like, but it's my success. So did it have to do with my personality? Did it have to do with the type of business that I have? I ran a B2B, right? Does that mean it was going to be more successful than a B2C? And does it have to do with the fact that I am an outgoing personality, right? I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. I'm always wanting to achieve. Like, there was a lot in the very, very beginning regarding, but I'm still having success. And is there a way that I can teach that to others? That was a mindset block. And then I remember having clients after having that my first year with my second business and bringing in 112 referrals in that first year. My clients were like, you're a great business coach. We really appreciate you teaching us how to be more productive and tame our inboxes, but we want to learn your referral strategy. And there was time and I was like, eek, what strategy? Great. Okay, let me figure out what I'm doing. I'm just throwing spaghetti on the freaking wall. Like, so as I started teaching it to them, I started having to refine the fact that, wait, yes, actually, I do the same things over and over again. And here's what I'm doing. And then when they couldn't get it, I'd be like, why can't they get it? This is so easy. I'd be like, oh, they need a visual to be able to understand it. And working with those handful of first clients that trusted me really was able to, for me to see like, this does work. And the very first 2 people I did it for, not in the same industry as me and could not have been more different than me, complete introverts. And so that helped, right? Seeing that result as it kind of went ahead, like, having that success. But I know early on, even as I would have more and more clients that had success, you kind of hit like, I've had a dozen clients have success. Now I've had hundreds have people have success, right? And you're kind of looking at that mindset shift. There's always that small part of you that I think, you just have to decide not to let it be very loud, but that it's kind of always there, that it's kind of like, is it not going to work? Right. And the truth is, it's been working for 10 years. It's been working for thousands of people. It's been working in lots of ways. And I still sometimes, not like I said before, not as much as in the beginning, but it was like overcoming that. It's not just me. It's not just this strategy that I pulled together to work for me, but look, actually, it's opening up a whole other way to see referrals and to teach it. And then to watch all of my clients that have had ridiculous success, and a lot of them have more and better success than me, and being like, for me, it was that shift of who am I to have an entirely different way to think about referrals and then teach it and then be successful with it. And then always that seed of doubt is like, it's just kind of always there because it was different. And it was just me doing something that nobody else had done before. And there was lots of people who didn't want to believe it to be true. And I would hear about those things. And so I think from a long time with that kind of whole journey that I went on in those early years is I created something new. I validated it. The science behind it was working. That's why it worked for me. I didn't know the science, right? I figured it out after the fact. And I think by just the way I built it, it kind of just placed this seed of doubt early on, pretty loudly in the early years. But I just kept pushing through it and like, nope, this is working. And look, there's another success story and there's another one to get to the point that I'm like, today, it's like, I know that this is like the bedrock of what I teach and the science that I base it on and the success that my clients have had. But I think about all the times where I second guessed myself early on and just had to choose to keep pushing forward because I came at this from such a different angle and such a you're so different from everyone else kind of mentality that sometimes that has you thinking, do I know what I'm talking about? And you have to constantly remind yourself that yes, you do. And lots of people do that in lots of different ways. And so for me, that was a big mindset shift that I had to continually kind of step over and kind of work towards and work through was this idea like, yeah, I'm a contrarian. I said every way that you guys do it is wrong. And I'm going to tell you why I'm right. And then I'm going to have the science to prove it and all these clients to prove it. But all of that was a journey. It didn't happen just because I snapped my fingers and all that was there. And so the confidence grew bit by bit because of that.
Well, self-doubt is something that we all experience. And for some people, they allow it to stop them. When you hear someone like yourself who has persevered in spite of the old tricky mindset stuff, it is validating to someone who is maybe bumping up against that right now. And it is amazing, right? We can have so much evidence to the contrary of the doubt, but the doubt can feel so real. And our mind is a tricky thing. So we have to be very, very aware and very mindful when we're triggered and we get into that triggered state because our mind knows exactly what to tell us to trip us up. It has practiced it. It is so proficient. It is like a ninja, right? And if we are not mindful and aware of what's happening, it can easily pull us off course. And then it's a lot harder to get back on track. But it's just a feeling. It's just an old limiting belief. It does not mean that that there's even any truth to it. And we do have to sometimes wrestle with the with the tricky mindset stuff. But I'm so grateful that you did because you are doing this incredible work and helping people in such a phenomenal way. And this is a perfect opportunity for me to ask how our listeners can connect with you, because I'm sure there are people who are listening who are like, this is exactly what I need.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And I think the mindset thing, and this is one thing I've noticed too, and I'm sure this is what you talk to your clients about all the time. Sometimes the mindset things that we struggle with look different further along in business, but they're all rooted in the same self-doubt a lot of times, right? It's just on a bigger scale, right? It's just sometimes bigger stakes or on a bigger scale. And sometimes I look back and I'm like, how is that mindset thing still tagging along after all these years? And I think personally, the self-doubt one is, unfortunately the biggest one. And I think a lot of mine is like really rooted in the fact that my first business failed. And that always is just kind of there. It just kind of always percolates underneath the surface. And usually it's used as like a swift kick in the hiney to like not going back there again. Like, let's be successful, which I do attribute a lot to the success of this business, also growing as a human as well. But yeah, it is that self-doubt. You're right. It's a very, very tricky thing. So for those of your listeners that are listening to this and they're like, finally, a different way to talk about referrals, a different way to think about generating referrals. And they just want to kind of start that journey of like, yes, let me figure out how to get referrals naturally so I don't have to manipulate people or incentivize or ask or any of those things is really the home base of my website. It's staceybrownrandall.com. And I know you'll put that in the show notes because Stacey's spelled with an E and it's got to get all the spelling right. But I really would say if people love listening to podcasts, I talk about this every week on my podcast. It's Roadmap to Grow Your Business. And we dive into about 80% of the time the topic of referrals and the things that people need to know and understand. We just recently had an episode that I came out talking about the difference between referrals and repeat clients. So sometimes we go into the nuances of referrals, and sometimes we stay more high level about the mindset around how you have to think about referrals and what it ultimately means with the science behind it. So I would say, since your podcast listeners are probably podcast listeners, and then checking out my podcast may be the great route for them to take. But we have lots of free resources on the website as well for them just to figure out, okay, maybe you'd rather read a book or take a quiz. We've got all those things for you to do on the website too.
Awesome. I want to thank you so much, Stacey, for being with us. You shared gold. So I so appreciate that. I love when a guest comes on and they're so damn good at what they do that they can just drop all sorts of valuable takeaways. And this was certainly one of those episodes.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
And of course, I've got to thank all of our listeners. We're doing this for you. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.